some paper out. What I want to talk about today, and I kind of alluded a little bit to it earlier, was my experience in New York City real estate. But it wasn't as much New York City real estate as it was our experience with 3 or 4 different real estate agents and the experience that we had with them. And I thought, wow, this is great. Here's some great do's and some great don'ts. So I kind of wanted to walk you through this. But to get a little bit of a picture, our experience, our daughter is moving into, she's got a job basically in Manhattan, and she needs to be in a certain area. And my wife had predetermined that she wanted her to be on this street, this far away, in this basic neighborhood, and that's it. And it had to be a building with a doorman, and it had to be this and that, this and that, okay? And she was very specific with the real estate agents, and she talked to all of them on the web, all right? So those of you, first of all, that aren't on Net Aspects, which is a website and lead management, etc., or something like Net Aspects, for very little money per month, I think are missing a giant opportunity. Because first of all, we'd never be talking to anyone because we went through listings after listings after listings looking in a certain area. And those listings are cross-referenced, which you could get the cross-reference. It happens all the time with the IDX. You're missing an opportunity. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and create websites. I'm not telling you to become the SEO king or queen of the business. But for between $55 and $65 a month, you can have a website, you can have a follow-up system, and you should have it. And if you have it and you're not using it now, then you need to spend some time on it. But remember, that's at 10 o'clock at night till 1 o'clock in the morning. It's not during prospecting time, right? Say yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, I know nobody heard me, but I just wanted to try and get my point across. So that's everybody's just going to run out tomorrow and get new websites. I know this, all right? Don't, okay? So we set appointments with 3 or 4 different brokers. Now, there's less than a 1% vacancy factor in New York City, less than 1%. So we were told, we were counseled by the agents. In the beginning, we didn't want to listen to them because, of course, who knows better? My wife's an attorney and I'm a real estate broker, okay? I know better. Well, they really stuck with us and said, look, we've got to counsel you on what's going on. You've got to know what's going on. This is how if you want a deal, forget about a deal in price. That ain't happening. But if you want to get a decent property in decent condition, in a decent neighborhood, in a decent building, then you better follow our advice. And here's what's interesting. The people, the agents who kept making their case as nicely but as firmly as they could not have been more right and more helpful, and the people at the end of the day that we ended up doing business with, okay? Because the other people just didn't have it. They just didn't have it. So let's go from this perspective, okay? So here's some of the do's that we ran into, and then I'll give you some examples as we're going through it. First of all, you've got to listen to your client. You've got to listen to your client. They need to tell you, but more importantly, you need to ask questions to get clarity. The single most important thing you can do to make a successful sale is listen to the client, understanding their wants and their needs. Now remember what I told you. We're looking for this small corridor, which was within 1 mile of the property, right on the subway line. That's what my wife was focusing in on. Now, what did we end up getting? It wasn't even close. Well, no, we didn't end up in Long Island. But we ended up about the same distance. My wife wanted to be on 14th Street, and we ended up on 23rd Street. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but in Manhattan, I'm telling you, every block is like a new city. Okay? It's amazing what's going on there. Amazing. One broker, the one thing he did was he stuck with us and kept asking questions. What is it you really want? What is it you really want? What are you looking for? And he set us up. Just write this down, ladies and gentlemen. He knew his inventory. He knew his inventory. He knew his inventory. He knew his inventory. That's why when he talked to us and asked us questions, he can say, yeah, you can stay here, and I'll show you some properties there. And by the way, the first two properties I went in and looked at, I was almost in tears. I couldn't imagine leaving my daughter in New York City, in these buildings, in these locations. The building was pre-war, but I'm not sure which war they were talking about. I'm not even sure it didn't go through the war. They were horrible. 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 Well, they started at 400 square feet. The question was how big. They started, we wanted preferably a one-bedroom. They started at 400 square feet and went all the way up to 650 square feet. And don't even ask about the price. I'm not telling. But
what's the price?
The agent, so we see some property, and one of the agents was an agent, but she really wanted to be more of an actress than an agent. But she showed us the property, and then she stands back, and she's a clerk. She's not showing, she's not asking, she's just being a clerk. She did get us into the building. She did get us up the elevator, which was questionable. Not her, the elevator. But I want you to know the experience with these two different people was like night and day. Like night and day. Remember I said earlier, you need to counsel your people because they're going to have to do it anyway? Well, they counseled us, and they said, you have to have your financials. You have to bring your financials with you. Well, what do you mean? Everything. All your, whatever your accounts are, all your stock bonds, everything, all your financials, have them ready, have them emailable and copies. Because the buildings go so fast. It's not the price. It's who's qualified. Because the laws, the tenancy laws in New York City are draconian. It's very, 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 very hard to get a tenant out. So they don't let a tenant go in unless they're platinum. So you have to have your financials. Well, I was thinking about this. How many times do we show property with clients that aren't really financially qualified? Or let's assume they're financially qualified. Let's assume that you've done your homework. But you haven't gotten all the paperwork together. Have you guys ever been in a transaction where you're still waiting for a bank statement or you're still waiting for a tax return? Has that ever happened? Let me tell you something. That guy would not go out with me until I showed him my tax return and my bank statements. He wouldn't go.
But you told us not to do that.
At some point, I think you can show a property. Remember, we've been talking to this guy for weeks, okay? We've been creating a relationship. He's been asking lots and lots and lots of what? Questions. I think if you get a call from somebody, boom, and they say, I'm calling on 123 Main Street, this is what you're referring to, then I think you need to connect with them. It's okay to go out and show them one property and start to build a rapport. but I wouldn't show them more than 1 or 2 properties in a close area without starting to build rapport and get the financials. But I'm telling you, we're writing offers, we're getting acceptances, and then we're going in and trying to build a package for the buyers, and the thing falls apart on us, mainly because it takes time to what? Get it together. Start educating your clients from the very minute you're talking to them about what they're going to need to make a smooth transaction. A smooth transaction. I didn't really like it, but the guy was a pro. So listen to your client. I wrote down here number 2, build a relationship and demonstrate your expertise. Buyers and sellers usually don't want to become experts. I didn't want to become an expert in the area. Your buyers and sellers don't necessarily want to become an expert. They just want to know you're an expert on the area and on the financing. Do you get that?
Yeah.
And yet, some of you show property without previewing it first. How do you do that? How is that possible? That you could actually go show a piece of property without having previewed it first. It's impossible. It doesn't make sense to me. And yet, you do it all the time. And then you come and complain to us that you can't make a sale. Duh. There's a correlation there. I wrote down here, next thought of a do. Always ask for business from everyone you meet. Everyone you meet. This guy did not stop closing on us for the next client. On the phone, who do we know in New York? What's going on? Who do we know? Who can I help? What can I do? Always asking for business. How many times do you ask to replace the client you're working with? How many times do you ask for new business? I wrote down here, study the competition. Study the competition. Know what your competitors know and know some more. He knew what buildings were available, what weren't, and what was required in one building and not required in another building. He knew what was going on. And there's a lot of competition in Manhattan real estate. A lot. As much competition in Manhattan real estate as there is in our general market here. I wrote down here, know their strengths and weaknesses and know how to explain how that can work for or against a buyer or a seller. So I'm using this here in our market. I said, let's say you're competing with a top agent for a listing. Okay? Top. Somebody that's doing 50 to 100 deals a year, and you're competing with that agent, and you do 5, 8, 10, 15, 20 deals a year. I know that you feel, oh, they're going to get it. I know you do. At some level, you're going to try your hardest, but at some level you think, they're going to get this. What am I going to do? So here's a question. How much time, effort, and energy have you practiced that issue? Because in this marketplace, it could come up, right? Say yes. Could you go on a listing appointment where there's a superstar against you? Is that possible? Yes. Okay. Have you ever really sat down and figured out what that looks like and what that means? I don't know if you know this or not, but most superstars in our marketplace, because you can run their statistics, and that's what I'm talking about here, you got to run their statistics. You'll find that most of the superstars are listing agents, not selling agents, right? Isn't that right? Overwhelmingly listing agents compared to selling agents. Well, let me tell you something. If I go up against that deal, no problem for me. I'm going to show the client, wow, I don't know if you knew this or not, but that one of the agents that you're talking about interviewing, they have a good track record, that's true. 50 houses were actually listings sold, and only 5 were buyer sales. 5 were buyer sales. Did you know that, Mr. and Mrs. Jones? Actually, my record's reversed. 5 of my transactions are buyer sales, and only 3 of them are listing solds. I specialize on getting homes sold. Now, isn't that really what you want? And I don't have a team that you're going to be talking to, because you're going to be talking to who? You're going to be talking to me. That person already has a reputation. They're already very good at it. And if they sell your house or they don't sell your house, they're still going to have a good reputation, right? I don't have a reputation. I have to sell your house. Who would you rather have working for you? Them or me? Is it going to work every time? No. Can it work if you work and know the statistics and know what's going on? But you've got to pre-plan it. This is very hard to do if you haven't been studying the market and studying statistics all along every week or every month. If all of a sudden you got a listing appointment and boom, you are head-to-head 3 hours from now with one of these agents and you haven't done your homework and you haven't done your role play, that could be a problem, right? That makes sense? I wrote down here, how about the buyer wants to work with the listing agent so they can get a better deal? So the buyer works with the listing agent so they can get a better deal. Anybody ever hear that? Okay, right? So, all right. So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, the buyer works, if you work with that listing agent, I don't know if you're aware of that, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, but that listing agent gets a number of listings from that bank or that savings and loan or that asset company. And I can understand where you think you might be getting that, but I don't know, did you know that that agent is graded on how close to list price they get the property? And their getting more listings is predicated on how close they get to list price on these transactions. So do you think they're going to be working on your behalf to get you a better price, or on their behalf so that they can get more listings for that company? Which one do you think they're going to be working on? Now, maybe that's not the best way to overcome that objection, but what's yours? What have you done? What have you thought about? What have you planned? I wrote down here the next thought. Know your product and service better than anyone. This agent I worked with, even though I found him a bit pompous, we'll talk about that in the don't side, okay? And a little bit of egotistical, we'll find that in the don't side. This guy knew his product. He knew his service. He knew what to expect and what to anticipate was going to happen with the transaction. I wrote down here on the do's, set goals and monitor your progress. Set goals and monitor your progress. This is really important. You've got to get this. This business is a marathon. Write that down. This business is a marathon of little sprints. Get it? See, here's what happened. If you sprint all the time in this business, you go, 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 head, 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 door, 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 you're going to bring yourselves out, ladies and gentlemen. You are. You really are. This is a marathon. You don't start a marathon at full speed, because you will not make it to the end of the marathon. On the other side of the coin, if you don't have mini sprints along the way, you're going to be bored with this marathon and not hit your goals along the way. So that's, you'll find in marathons, people time themselves on the mile, or they time themselves on the 2 mile, or they say that in the first quarter of the marathon I need to hit these numbers. In the middle I'm going to slow down a little bit, and in the end I'm going to kick it up a little bit. And they've got their stopwatch on, or they have a team member that's working with them on this. So the business is a marathon, but you had better set goals along the way, or have markers along the way to determine where you're supposed to be at any given week or month or year. We ask you to keep track of your numbers and keep track of that accountability. That's all part of it. Where am I this week? Where am I this month? You know, I'm bugging you guys about previewing property and going to see property. Those of you that are hitting 20 to 25 previews a week are starting to get it, understand it, get your appointments, and turn your appointments into listings. Those of you that are not doing the previews, the truth is you're really not doing the business and you don't understand why, and we keep telling you and you're not listening. Okay? One of the do's is take the wax out of your ears. Really? Take the wax out of your ears. Pay attention. All right? I wrote down here, next thought. See rejection as a tool to learn about yourself. How do you react to rejection? Does it stop you? Or does it say, whoa, I need to hear that. I need to get going. You know, we talk about we're working on the scripts and dialogues now. Never take no for an answer when yes is still possible with a qualified client. And we're taking those no's 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Practice those over and over and over and over again. So that when you get the no's, they tend to bounce off of you. Or you absorb them. They don't stop you. That's the question. How hard or easy are you to stop? That's the question you have to be asking yourself all the time. I wrote down here, work as hard to keep the business as you did to get it. Oh, let me say that again. Work as hard to keep the business as you did to get the business. What are you doing on follow-up? When's the last time you talked to your past client and sphere? Do you stay in touch with them? That's one of the beauties that we were talking about net aspects, is you can put your clients on a drip campaign, and on a weekly basis, they can get something from you and you can touch them. Because you never know when people are going to wake up and say, hey, I need to do this. I need to do something. I need to do something in real estate, or I have a friend in the business. I wrote down here, another one is let poor prospects go earlier rather than later. Be qualifying your clients, be qualifying your clients, be qualifying your clients. Qualitize your clients. Always be working with better prospects. And if it's not a good prospect, cut it loose. Cut it loose and go find a good prospect. And then I wrote down here, the next one is keep your ego out of the sales process. Keep your ego out of the sales process. Now let's go through some don'ts real quick. Don't try to make a sale without first building trust. Don't try to make a sale without first building some trust. How do you build trust? Ask questions. Ask questions. Ask them questions. Don't tell, ask. Don't tell, ask. You guys get this? We're constantly telling, and we're asking them to buy, and we haven't even built a rapport yet. Show them what you know. You know, this was pretty cool. They have these broker-tenant agreements. Now, we had built a relationship between this guy, he and I. There was some trust. My wife and him, there was some trust. We went to the building. Now, the first broker wouldn't show us the property until we signed an agreement that if we lease those properties, that we're going to lease from them. I mean, we're standing on the street in New York City on a corner, and we're signing documents before we go into that building. That's the first one. Okay? That's the way they do business. Second one, well, the guy we ended up doing a deal with, we walked to the building, and he pulled out some papers, and he says, I just want to remind you, you know, we've got these papers. I'm not going to ask you to sign them. I'm not going to ask you to sign them. I trust you. We've built some rapport. We're cool with this thing. If you lease anything I show you today, you'll do business with me. Are we okay? Are we good with that? We're good with that. That was fine. Okay, we had a conversation, but that was the deal. Now, okay, I guess I could burn him. I guess we could have done something, but that's not where I come from. It's not where my wife comes from. That's not what we're going to do. But we had already built some trust with this person before he starts asking for signatures. Now, a little later in the deal, he's asking for signatures. Oh, by the way, he did ask to look at the financials. Okay, he did say, hey, let me just cruise through that. Because there's no reason for him to show anything unless we earn enough money and our daughter earns enough money and there's enough money in the bank to be able to cover that. Otherwise, there's nothing going on there. So that was important. Next one, don't waste the time with your clients who don't fit you. Don't waste time with clients who don't fit you. If your client is real demanding and you're not real good with a real demanding client, refer the client out. Give it to somebody else that works better with that client. Because if you don't fit, all you're going to do is have this constantly, and it's not going to work. If you have a client that has high expectations about what's going on in the neighborhoods and you don't know, then give that client to another agent in the company who can work with that client. There's no reason for you to continue with that client. You're just going to have these constant battles, okay? I wrote down, don't nag, but don't give up too early. Don't nag, but don't give up too early. And what do I mean by that? Sometimes clients are really too busy to focus right now. And sometimes when we were getting phone calls back and returning calls back and forth, sometimes we go 2-3 days without returning a phone call. They could have dropped us, or they could have nagged us, or they could have been abusive, or in fact, by the way, there was a couple that were. Okay? Tell the truth. This is one I just remembered. We actually had another agent that was really very good also on the phone and communicative and sending information. And we were going to go this weekend, we were going to go that weekend, we were going to go that weekend. It was a little bit of a moving target. Just was. We ran into some stuff. We said, okay, that's it. We're coming. We emailed the agent, and the agent said, oh, this is not a good weekend to come because a lot of properties won't be up. You should come the weekend after. So my wife says, well, what does that mean? Because there was like, well, there's more, theoretically, there should be more properties that come available at the first of the month because you give notice. Theoretically, that should be. But the way she explained it was more toward the middle of the end of the month. So my wife, being a lawyer and pretty good at what she does, she smelled something. So she asked a couple of questions, and what she found is that the agent didn't want her to come that weekend because that agent was going to be out of town. Instead of telling the truth and saying, I'm busy that weekend, I can either make arrangements or something, or here's some properties, good luck, you know, she lied. She lied. She didn't get a call. We didn't talk to her at all. Now, maybe she had better properties. I don't know. But I'm not starting a relationship. Does this make sense? You guys got to tell the truth. Don't nag. I wrote down here. So a no, instead of being no, could be not right now. Okay? Instead of a no being a no, it could be, not right now. I'm a little busy. We'll do this later, etc. All right? So the next thought is, my favorite question here. How many deals have you lost from over-following up? How many deals have you lost in your career from over-following up? How many deals have you lost from under-following up? Which one's more? Turn the machine off for a minute and then turn it back on, please.